Welcome, marketing chefs. I've got something truly special cooking in the Omni-Channel oven today. Captain Marvel, spoiler review, red carpet Asia premiere, up next in the Marketing Kitchen. Welcome to the kitchen, the Marketing Kitchen. Hi, I'm Ron Vining, your host of MarketingKitchenTV. On our storytelling stovetop today is the spoiler review for Captain Marvel, as my coverage of an event that happened a couple of weeks ago, which was the red carpet premiere here in Singapore.
Good evening and welcome to the Captain Marvel fan event. During tonight's show, the venue lighting will be significantly lowered along with moments of darkness, strobe lighting effects, and loud noises.
On behalf of the Walt Disney Company and Marvel Studios, I want to thank George and the incredible team at Brie for once again hosting what I know is going to be a very, very special Captain Marvel fan event. I also really want to thank all of you guys, the fans, for the continued love and support that you show for these characters and these incredible stories. It's been how long? 10 years? Over 10 years? And 20 movies. Audiences in Asia have proven time and time again that they are not only the greatest fans on the planet, but also the most excited.
I'd like to thank Tom and Disney for the opportunity to work with them on staging events like this, because it really means a lot to Marina Bay Sands and to Singapore. And the only request that I have is that we continue to look for new opportunities to bring your superstars in for more events where we can promote your great blockbuster films. Thanks very much for your partnership, Tom.
I live in Singapore. I get to see the same trailers that everyone else does around the world. I don't think that the trailers did the film any justice. I don't think that the posters really sold the film with showing Captain Marvel glowing. What were they going for with that? The marketing, the publicity was not as good as it could have been for the film. They just didn't do it for me. Her transforming into hero, okay, all right. I'm not inspired. They held a red carpet event here in Singapore, the only red carpet event in Asia, which was rare because when they did the promotion for Infinity War, Captain America Civil War, we got all across Asia, actually all across the world, there were press events. So I'm not complaining though, that Singapore did get the only one, but I was just surprised that they didn't market it across Southeast Asia or Greater Asia like they had before. At the red carpet event that I attended were Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, Gemma, and the writers and directors Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. Let me show you some clips from the event and you can see yourself. Here's Captain Marvel, Brie Larson.
What makes Captain Marvel so different than anything else you've ever played? It's the nature of this story. Because a lot of time in film it's about getting to the thing, saving the thing, but really this is about her getting to herself. So we get to follow her through this journey of finding herself. She starts off being incredibly tough and strong, but it's really the vulnerability and the heart that comes into play that brings her closer to herself.
What was that moment when you were shooting a scene when you realized to yourself, I'm Captain Marvel?
I still haven't felt like that yet. But I will say there was a day in the Hollywood backlots where they have all these fake sets, and there's a fake Italian restaurant, and we were using it to actually eat lunch in. And I drove by, and it was our crew members eating lunch with people that were still in their alien costumes. And I was like, this is the world I want to live in.
Here's Nick Fury in all his glory, Samuel L. Jackson.
I repeat, come in control center. This is Samuel L. Jackson. In Singapore. This is control Control Center 1. Mr. Jackson, you are cleared to land. Welcome to Singapore.
Only Nick Fury can come on the quick at Marina Bay Sands.
About what you're going to do with this film, because it's an origin story for Captain Marvel, but also for Nick Fury, turning back the time. That must have been a really fun challenge for you to do that.
We get a little more information than we've had about him, where he's come from, who his folks are, some of his experiences, and he's not as worldly and wise and as smart as he is in the later life.
And absolutely, this of course is happening in the 90s. Can I ask you what you miss most about the 1990s?
Most about the 90s?
The 1990s.
Yeah, like you.
Come on, what are some of the things you could do in the 90s you can't do now? I bet you can do everything.
A lot of things I can do. I can run faster, I can eat more, and taller.
You know, age does that to us. It does that to us. You know, Sam, you've worked with Brie Larson a few times already.
Yes.
And she's even directed you, I believe, in a film. But what was it like being in a Marvel film where you're Nick Fury and you're kind of bringing her into this world?
I don't know if I'm bringing her into this world as much as trying to help her discover a lost part of herself and growing as a person myself, because my job has been to assess threats from this world and where they would come from, and all of a sudden I'm meeting someone who's from somewhere else that I never imagined or gave a thought to being a threat. So now I realize there are people and things out there that are bigger, stronger, faster, and possibly smarter than all of us.
And what was it about the story of Captain Marvel that really said, you know, this is something different? I mean, what was it to you that made it special?
The fact that it was Brie, that I was having an opportunity to actually interact with someone that I liked.
You make it sound like it's the first time.
Having had experience with her, I was anxious to help her create a character that was going to have a lasting effect on a world that meant a lot to me, and what she'll mean to the Marvel universe and what she brings to it in terms of not just her talent and energy, but the kind of gravitas as a human being she has.
And I can imagine that this world does mean a lot to you. I mean, you really are an MCU veteran. What has this journey been like for you? You must feel immense pride and passion being a part of this incredible adventure. What does that mean to you as an actor and as a person?
Well, it's sort of great to actually experience a world that I imagined as a child in another kind of way, because I read comic books and I understood who these characters were, and to be able to stand in a space with these particular characters and participate in a very real world kind of way that I pretended to as a child. It's also great to be part of something that you know will be studied in cinematic history. That I've been fortunate enough to have a few of those experiences, and this adds to that experience in terms of what the Marvel universe is and what it means to the way films are perceived. I love you! I love all you back, believe me.
You know, I got a question for Ryan and Sam. You know, they say behind every man there's a strong, powerful, inspirational woman. Who are the women in your life that made a difference to you? Sam?
Oh, mine? Well, I had a lot of teachers as a kid. My mom, my grandmother, first real influences. My wife and daughter inspire me every day. My wife's a wonderful actress. Challenges me in real interesting kinds of ways to be as honest as I can when I'm working. And my daughter, the person I've always wanted to entertain and make proud, I think I've done a pretty good job of doing that.
Nice. But you know, talking about heroes for a moment, you know, Sam, I understand that you actually had a great morning learning about an incredible organization that is supported by Sands for Singapore, Marina-based Sands CSR program, whose charter lies in supporting causes related to youth and education. And I know you were busy preparing a little something for them. Can you tell us about that?
Just a small surprise from the people at Marvel and Captain Marvel in particular. Nice little boxes that have some things in them that hopefully will bring a smile and give memories, good memories of us being here and us participating.
Here is Gemma Chan as Minn-Erva.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Gemma Chan. How are you? It's a very smoky, foggy welcome to Singapore. We'd like to make an impact here.
It's been something like this. I was thrilled to be asked to be part of it. I'm so excited that it's the first female-led Marvel film. So yeah, it's great.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Here are the writer and directors of Captain Marvel, Anna and Ryan.
Anna, I know you've had a long day. We're just so happy to see you. And yes, you are the first female director in the MCU.
You know this, Anna. They say that Asia has some of the biggest Marvel Cinematic Universe fans.
There's so many women who inspire me. Obviously, my partner Anna, my mom, teachers, my wife, of course, so many people. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
It was quite compelling to have the major cast here, live in Singapore. It was an interesting event, but it was not the best event. And it did not inspire me to run out to go see the film either. But just something was really off about the marketing for this. I mean, if a live event with the stars doesn't do it for you, then the trailers certainly aren't going to do it either. All of that being said, spoiler warning, do not watch this video until you have seen Captain Marvel in the theaters. Let's talk Captain Marvel. Where do we begin? Let's talk about all the noise that happened before the release of this film. There's been the he said, she said, she said, she said, he said, I don't know, this noise about this being a feminist film, about this being a gender-specific film, a Me Too, Can we just get rid of that noise? Can we have an honest conversation about this film? I hope so. All right, let's go. The noise surrounding the release of this film, this was self-inflicted noise. The noise going into this film was this would be the last Jedi of the Marvel franchise. What The Last Jedi was to a 40-year-old Star Wars franchise, Captain Marvel was to be that for the MCU. And I want to say that I was a bit concerned when I heard that. And the trailer didn't inspire much confidence. The red carpet premiere that I went to in Singapore reinforced some of the negative hype that I was hearing. I just wasn't thrilled going in to see the film. But, ready? Are you surprised? Are you still watching? I enjoyed the film. Let's get this out of the way. Certainly, there were the... I don't know how to say it without getting a bunch of negative comments. There certainly were some of the feminist, how do I say them? Feminist lines that were unnecessary in the film. Some cliche stuff that could have been removed from the script. But all in all, I was fine with the movie. Again, maybe I went in with lower expectations because of the noise I heard coming in, but to be honest with you, it wasn't bad. Now, let's talk about what I mean when I say it wasn't bad. All right, I have seen every film in the MCU, and I'll tell you my favorite, my top three, and I'll tell you my bottom three. And then I think that's probably the best way to gauge when I say that this film wasn't bad. All right, let's start with my bottom three. And I know that get some hate for this one too, and maybe you'll ask me and then I'll explain it in another video. I would say that my bottom three, in no specific order: Iron Man 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Black Panther. All right, you can start clicking the thumbs down now, saying, oh, he's a hater. No, I'm not. Captain Marvel falls into that bottom four. Again, in no specific order. Somewhere in there, Captain Marvel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Iron Man 3, and Black Panther are in the bottom four of the MCU. Now, if you're including Ang Lee, the Hulk, unofficially part of the MCU in there, so now my bottom four is a bottom five. That's where I'm at in the MCU. If I had to choose my favorite four, so you have a better understanding, my top four, again in no specific order. Now I'm going to exclude Captain America Civil War, and I'm going to exclude Avengers Infinity War, because those were truly ensemble films. And it's not fair to judge the more solo outing films with ones that have such a large cast in them. I don't think it's fair to do that. But if I were going to choose, so if I'm going to choose the ensemble films, then I would say that Infinity War is the best and Captain America Civil War would be the second best. And I put Civil War above the other two Avenger films as well. I just think that those two, Infinity War and Civil War, worked better than the first Avengers film, as well as the Age of Ultron. Just my opinion. Going on sort of the solo outing films, or a little bit of partnership. My favorite Marvel films, in no specific order, would be the first Iron Man film that came out a decade ago, Captain America, the First Avenger, and Captain America, Winter Soldier. All right, let's round it out with four to add a bit of balance, and that would be Thor Ragnarok. So I gave you my bottom five, but if I were to give you my top five, then tied would be the two Guardians films, but I'll give an edge to Volume 2. Those would be my five favorite. So there was my bottom five, and there was my top five. Let's go back and talk about Captain Marvel. That's why you're here. You didn't want to hear my take on the other films. Spoiler warning. What worked and what didn't work with Captain Marvel? First off, I wasn't turned off by the strong pro-female tone of the film. No problem with it at all. I don't feel that it was what the negative buzz or the negativity going into the film. Maybe it was so high that when I went and I saw it, okay, fine with it. Again, could have tweaked the script a little bit. I understand. Just a payback time. Let's have men be the brunt of some of the punchlines. I can live with that. That's cool. So no worries there. Let's talk about what went wrong with the film, and then let's talk about what went right with it. What went wrong with the film? There were too many story threads. None of them were fully realized. The story thread started, a story thread wasn't fully completed or fully developed. That's a better word for it. As a corporate brand storyteller, I wrote a blog about why The Last Jedi failed, and I based it on 4 brand criteria. The link right here, and I'll put the link in the description as well too if you want to read that to see where I'm coming from when I talk about being a corporate storyteller and just applying branding, brand value, brand consistency to storytelling. But when it comes to storytelling, you put forth a thread, the audience expects you to do something with that thread. If you put several threads out there, they expect you to weave those threads together to make perhaps a sweater. And maybe it's this red sweater. What happens, however, when you just throw out threads and threads and threads, but you don't ever fully develop them, then the audience gets confused along the way, or they're like, wow, this is interesting, but you didn't finish that thought. This is going to be the final time I say spoiler warning. If you hear anything that you didn't want, you've been warned. For me, I enjoyed, again, this is a spoiler warning, so I'll start to go into spoiler territory now. When you seed the thread of Jude Law's character and how his blood was running through the veins of Captain Marvel, he saved her life and trained her to be the warrior that she is, a noble warrior hero or whatever that line was. I would like to see more of that. And maybe we will in a sequel, because there were, and again, here's the spoiler, there were so many different villains that no one got fully developed. So the Kree, which Captain Marvel thinks that she is at the beginning of the film, are bad guys. Again, spoiler warning. Okay. That's played out a little bit, but not fully. The Skrull are the bad guys. That's played out pretty well. And one of the high points that I'll talk about later is Ben Mendelsohn's character as Talos. It's fantastic. He's the star of the film. Like, that character, that's the star of the film in my opinion. Give me more of that. And man, I mean, Ben Mendelsohn was fantastic as Director Krennic in Rogue One. He shines through being the villain / good guy in this one. That was powerful. All right, sorry, I'm doing the negative first. We spent a lot of time introducing that as being the villain, and it didn't end up being the big bad. And in fact, there is no big bad. And in the trailer, we saw Ronan, and the same actor is back portraying Ronan from the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, Thanos' son. I thought that we were going to get to see a battle between Captain Marvel and Ronan the Destroyer. Nope. Let's see. Minn-Erva. Now, I didn't read Captain Marvel comics, but they talked her up, especially at the red carpet event. Wow, I thought that Minn-Erva was going to have a big role in the film. I think she was in it for all of 5 minutes. Another, I don't know, wasted thread. Mar-Vell, another thread portrayed by Annette Bening. Okay. She was phoning in some of those lines. But I mean, they didn't give her a lot to work with. So I guess what I'm starting to get to right here is the fact that the script suffered. So I think there were great characters, and there were certainly talented performers, but I don't think that they had the right script, and I don't think that they had the right direction to give you everything that you needed for this film to not be at the bottom of the MCU and to have made itself up the ranks. Now, as a corporate communicator, one of the things that I talk about goes way back to when I'm still currently a professor, so I'm a professor of marketing now. But when I first started teaching, I was a communications professor. And I used to teach a course called Business Communication and another course called Rhetorical Communication. And in that course, we taught the theory by David Berlow, and it was called the Model of Communication. Anyway, I'll share that model with you right now. It's pretty simple. Share the model with you now, and then we can also make it go big screen so that you can look at it a little bit closer. But one of the things that you see first is the environment, and that's the context or the situation. So let's talk about the context or the situation that Captain Marvel as a film, and when the timing of this film being released, plays into the whole MCU. Last year, we had Black Panther come out about in the same time slot in advance of Avengers Infinity War. It was absolutely necessary for Black Panther to come out so that when again, spoiler warnings here, Black Panther was absolutely necessary to come out in this time frame as a setup, precursor for the final battle that would happen in Avengers Infinity War. Black Panther as a character was given the opportunity to be introduced to the audience in Captain America Civil War. So when an audience went to see Black Panther, they already had an understanding about who the character was, and even though Black Panther was an origin story, it didn't require the same amount of setup as, say, Captain Marvel needed. When we talk about, again, the environment, the setting, or the situation, Captain Marvel is in a similar situation in that it is absolutely necessary for this film to come out now because Captain Marvel is going to not only be a key character, I presume anyway, I've not seen Avengers Endgame yet, I've seen toy leaks and I've heard buzz, and I can make assumptions based on the in-credits scene that Captain Marvel will play a significant role in Avengers Endgame. So it was absolutely necessary to have her origin story and set up here, and that's why the film is set back in 1995, so that when we see her in present day, everything makes sense and we know who she is. The reason for that setup is so that when we watch Endgame, she is part of the story, not a distraction. One of the things that harms Captain Marvel is the fact that this is her first time on screen. But this isn't the first Marvel movie that was an origin story. We've had many. Just about every Marvel character has had an origin story. Captain America, the First Avenger, origin story. Iron Man, origin story. Thor, origin story. Ant-Man, origin story. Get my point? There's been a lot of origin stories since the deal between Sony and Disney was inked. We've certainly seen Spider-Man origin. We've seen a number of Spider-Man origin stories. We're not unfamiliar with that concept, but this one just tried to do too many things. Maybe that's because of the fact of the context or the situation or the setting that we're in, that Captain Marvel had to do, this film had to do too many things to bring us to Avengers Endgame, which will be out a little over a month's time. Cannot wait for that film. Like, talk about expectations. And again, when we talk about the context or the setting, everybody's so excited about Endgame that some of those expectations are obviously rubbing off on Captain Marvel. And I told you I liked Captain Marvel. I'm not saying it was not a good film. I'm just first want to tell you about some of the things that didn't work for me. And some of the things that didn't work for me was the fact that Star Force, led by Jude Law, those characters got such, I mean, it was like a laser beam. Boom, and gone. They didn't get the time that they deserved for us to care about them when the epic battle is happening against Captain Marvel. And again, there are too many villains. Too many. So we have Star Force, we have Skrulls, and we have Ronan as the potential three bad guys. And I throw in that Shield at one point. So actually at one point in the film, and Captain Marvel isn't aware of this at different times in the film, but I mean, there's four potential ensemble of enemies that she's facing. And let's talk about what she's facing, by the way. She's facing memory loss. Again, spoiler warning. She's facing memory loss. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't realize that she's from Earth. I don't believe that she knew that she was an Earthling. So, okay. Did she grow at all in the film? And again, this goes back to the storytelling. It goes back to the script. It goes to the plot. Captain Marvel, as a superhero, she starts off the film very strong. And man, so getting to the positives, the film started out great. I was impressed. The fighting sequence, fantastic. The ambush in that battle, great. Visuals, fantastic. Not a problem with that at all. The problem is that Captain Marvel starts out with her only issue, her only flaw. And again, this goes back to storytelling. Captain Marvel's only flaw, and it was to no fault of her own, she had lost her memory, and she was being held back by a chip, if you will, like a restraining bolt that a droid in Star Wars would have on it. She had a restraining bolt. So she had a leash, and she was under Jude Law's thumb, if you will. So with that leash and with artificial intelligence being the big bad that maybe she'll face in a future film, and again, if there is a future, and there will be, so not if, when there is a Captain Marvel solo outing, part 2, who's she going to face? Is she going to go back in time and we're going to see what happened in between 1995 to 2019? Are we going to see her liberating the galaxy? Or does her adventure take place from 2019 onward? That's also a difficulty about where she's placed in the Marvel universe. I have no fear, I have no issue about how the overall story will be told, because with Kevin Feige, who is just a brilliant storyteller, and if you don't know who Kevin Feige is, here he is. He is the master storyteller in the sense of being able to just seed the content across the entire MCU. And it's just utter brilliance. Hats off to Kevin Feige. Unfortunately, he was a bit too hands-off, I think, on this particular story. While it will fit into the greater Marvel narrative, MCU narrative, I just think that it, as a standalone film, it just suffers from no strong villain, no big bad, and the group of big bads were too weak, and we've got a hero that's too strong. Brie Larson, her performance was a bit, there were some really bright moments in her performance, but there were a lot of wooden moments as well too. And I get her character, she was being held back, right, as I mentioned, and she didn't really know who she was. I never sympathized with her. Like, let's take Bucky, the Winter Soldier. He suffers from memory issues, just as Captain Marvel had. He's been held back by brainwashing, by being given orders that he must follow. So in a way, he can't be himself. But he's tortured. He's tormented. I feel for Bucky. I feel his pain. I never once felt anything really. There were a few moments where I smiled, like where Brie's personality, where she gives a couple of lines and it's just like, oh wow, that's touching, that's endearing. But never once did I connect on the same level as, say, what happened with Bucky and Bucky's journey. And I think that was a missed opportunity. And the reason why I never connected with Captain Marvel, beyond what I just mentioned, was because she starts off the film strong and she ends the film stronger. And when we go back to a hero's journey, which I don't care what genre of film you're crafting, what story you're telling, you've got to go back to Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey. Here's the hero's journey. Might as well share that with you. With the hero's journey, you see that there's certain steps that a character has to take as they grow. Brie Larson's character never grew. She gets her memory back, well, sort of, but anyway, she knows who she is. She's free from the leash or the restraining bolt, so she can make her own choices. And her power and her unlimited potential has been unlocked. But I felt nothing along that journey, because when and how did she ever suffer? When was she actually ever in danger? So I was never on the edge of my seat. The only time that I was like, wow, was when the big reveal happens, when Ben Mendelsohn's character enlightens Captain Marvel and Nick Fury, we'll get to Nick in a little bit, enlightens them to the fact that the Skrulls are actually the good guys and the Kree are the bad guys. Wow, duh, I didn't see that one coming. So I was happy about that. That was great. So that's fantastic. That's great. From a storytelling perspective, from a plot, fantastic. Love that. No problems there. The problem, though, is that Captain Marvel never grew. Now, I'm going to do something that some people are going to go crazy about. I'm going to talk about the sequel Star Wars trilogy for a minute. And I think this is where some of that negativity is coming from. Again, I'm not being negative about this. I recommend, if you watch Marvel films and you like superhero films, go see Captain Marvel. But the problem that Captain Marvel faces is the same problem that Rey faces across The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. That word is growth. When we talk about the hero's journey, Rey has never actually, Rey doesn't take the hero's journey. Rey is already the hero. Captain Marvel doesn't take the hero's journey. She's already as Veers. So when she starts off the film, she's Veers. She realizes that she's Carol Danvers, and then she becomes Captain Marvel. Okay. That's in name only. She doesn't really grow. So we don't get that journey. And it's very important in storytelling, especially in film when we only have 2 hours plus minus. for us to see and feel that. That was the flaw of the film. Let's go with the things that I liked about the film. And I've already touched on some of them. Number one was the beginning of the film. Great, fantastic, action-packed start. A little twist in there that's good. Like it a lot. Jude Law shined in the role of being the leader of Star Force. I don't think, though, that he was given the opportunity to fully develop or bloom as the villain that he should have been allowed to do. But the positive, he was great in the role, didn't get to grow. Star Force, love the concept. They're like the anti-Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, once you realize that they're the villains. The whole concept is great. I'd love to see that ensemble of Star Force in a film again. But the problem is that now I don't know how we would receive them in a future film now that we know that they're the villains. But they were fantastic. Let's talk about Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. Fantastic, right? Who doesn't like Samuel L. Jackson? And who doesn't like the character of Nick Fury? I think that the de-aging software that they used to transform Nick, make him how he looked back in 1995, how we would have seen him if we were watching another amazing film that he starred in, Pulp Fiction, anyone? He looked fantastic, and that was great. Agent Coulson is back, and he was de-aged as well. When you're watching the credits, and again, there are 2 end credit scenes, when you're watching the credits, there's so many different companies that did special effects for this film. And I wonder if 2 different companies did Agent Coulson versus did Samuel L. Jackson, because the de-aging didn't look as good on Agent Coulson as it did on Samuel L. Jackson. Well, obviously, Sam was the co-star of this film, so Nick Fury, whereas Agent Coulson was just sort of origin film for him. And it was nice to see him back on the big screen. But he gets a very small role. And I would have liked to have seen him be developed or flushed out a little bit more. So that's a negative. I guess, so again, the overall negative of the film is just that there were too many characters and they didn't get their chance to be developed or to shine in the way that I think that with a bit of the tweak of the script and a little bit of the tweak of the direction, then I think that this ensemble piece, if you will, could have been a bit tighter and could have been a bit more rewarding for the audience, especially for known characters, whether they were known in name, like Minn-Erva, or whether they were known from their other screen time that we've had with them. Anyway, I just point that out. Nick Fury, character was great. Again, he's just being a badass, as he always is. Really appreciated the character. I think some people have been referring to this film as a buddy cop film. And if you remember, Samuel L. Jackson was in a buddy cop film with another talented actor. Oh, what's his name? Oh, Bruce Willis. That was what, Die Hard 3? Ever know the history? Here, tangent alert. Die Hard 3 was actually the script for a Lethal Weapon sequel that was then adapted for Die Hard 3. Anyway, that's a rumor that I heard. Maybe I'm wrong. That was a good a buddy cop movie, if you will. Sometimes the buddy cop movie doesn't mean that they're both cops. It means that they're thrust into a situation and have to do something together. Well, that's what happens with Brie Larson's character of Veers and Samuel L. Jackson's character as Nick Fury. An unlikely duo needs to team up to save the universe. And it works well. I will say, though, that the chemistry between them, while it was quite good in some parts, some of the other parts, Nick actually has better chemistry with the cat, which is the Flerken. And I think some of the touching and fun moments that happened between Nick Fury and the Flerken could have been better utilized between Nick and Captain Marvel, or Carol Danvers. Just a critique there. And speaking about the cat, got a lot of good laughs from the audience when I saw the film. Don't have a problem with it. The bonus scene at the end with the cat first consuming the Tesseract and spitting the Tesseract out, having it lay out on Nick Fury's desk back in 1995. I'm curious to see if they're going to go anywhere with that. Oh, and before I forget, by the way, when the film begins, the typical Marvel logo comes up, the animation showing you all of the different Marvel characters, and that animation has evolved over the years. In this particular case, it was dedicated Stan Lee. And so all of the characters were Stan Lee and his various characters, or shots with some of our Marvel heroes, and then the film is opening being saying thanks Stan. That was good props to that. That was quite fitting for Marvel to do that. The big positive was Ben Mendelsohn, and his character of Talos was just fantastic. First being the villain, then turning out to be the sympathetic hero. When we talk about a hero's journey, Ben Mendelsohn's character of Talos had a stronger hero's journey with less screen time than Brie Larson's Captain Marvel did, going from Veers to Carol Danvers to Captain Marvel. Talos the bad guy, Talos the hero, Talos the bad guy, Talos the refugee, Talos the hero. There was your hero's journey. It's a bit ironic. There was a big payoff though. That was, to me, the best part of the film. That should have been reserved for the namesake of the title itself. Some other positives of the film: special effects were excellent. I enjoyed seeing the origin of Nick Fury. I didn't like the reason that they gave for him being blind in one eye, but maybe there will be a bigger reveal later. Maybe the Flerken gives him some gift that we're unaware of, and we needed a magical creature to have given the scratch. The casting, I thought, again, was fantastic. The setup or lead up into Avengers Endgame, I thought, was quite compelling as well too. My rating of the film: I would give this film, honestly, I'd give this film a 7. All in all, a decent film. It's satisfactory because I would watch it again. I would recommend it. It just didn't sit with me in the same way that the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy films did. The original Iron Man, the first 2 Captain Americas, as well as Thor Ragnarok. Those are like the top of the Marvel films. And again, for ensemble pieces, Civil War and Infinity War. And I loved Ant-Man. Oh, geez, why didn't I throw Ant-Man into that mix? Talk about origin story, hero's journey. Ant-Man, so the original Iron Man, definitely. Ant-Man, definitely. It had it. Anyway, I give this film a 7. The end credits scene is just fantastic. At the end of Infinity War, Nick Fury pulls out a pager. He hits it before he falls victim to the snap. We see Captain Marvel's symbol appear, and the pager drops as Nick fades away into oblivion. Well, we get to see in Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers' character, give that pager to Nick Fury. She says to only call him if it's an absolute emergency. It was quite fitting when he used it in Avengers Infinity War. In the bonus scene, we see that Captain America, Bruce Banner, Black Widow, Rhodey, we see that they have recovered Nick's pager, and they have been continuously sending the signal out to the universe saying that if Nick used this, then you've got to see who it is that he was calling. I think it was quite powerful. Captain America says, well, keep trying. As soon as it's working, you let me know. And they turn around, and there's Carol Danvers, or Captain Marvel. So I thought that was quite compelling. Gets me even more pumped to see Avengers Endgame. I enjoyed Captain Marvel, so I would recommend the film. I give it a 7. Believe that anybody who likes the MCU will also like and enjoy this film. And I believe that it is recommended or required viewing for anyone that watches the MCU films and intends on seeing Avengers Endgame in April. It's a must-see from that perspective, going back to the context. So in my final analysis, if we're going to do a quick pro and con, the negatives are that there were too many characters. While the casting was excellent, the characters didn't get a chance to be fully developed, which was a shame. There were too many story elements that were introduced, none of them also fully developed. There was not one big bad, so there were too many villains, which makes sometimes using ensemble villains weakens the overall story. And then when it comes to the hero's journey, Veers, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel didn't really have one. She was already a superhero. She just needed to have the leash removed for her to become Captain Marvel, the superhero. That didn't work for me. The positives: there were a lot of laughs. I enjoyed seeing the 1990s. I remember it well. The soundtrack was entertaining. The visuals were great. I enjoyed seeing a younger Nick Fury as well as Agent Coulson. I think that Captain Marvel, or Carol Danvers, is a likable character. I thought that Jude Law made for an excellent villain. I feel that while it was good to see Ronan the Destroyer again, I feel that he was wasted. The real star of this film was Ben Mendelsohn as Talos. He had the hero's journey. He was a sympathetic character. I actually wanted to see, I didn't need to see any more, but I wouldn't mind seeing more. So his story was played out, and I thought that was quite well done. I'd like to see Ben Mendelsohn return again. And seeing as that he's a shapeshifter, there's no reason why we couldn't see Ben Mendelsohn again without the makeup. Perhaps S.H.I.E.L.D. needs a new big boss if something happens to Nick Fury. I give this film a 7. I recommend it. It's required viewing for anybody who's going to see Avengers Endgame. Probably one of the biggest sells for the film. All of the negative hype should just go away. The negative reviews I don't think are necessary because of that hype. I say go see it. Just don't expect hero's journey. Don't expect great storytelling. Expect an enjoyable superhero film. It's certainly not at the bottom of the MCU, also is not at the top. So go see Captain Marvel. Look for my next review, which will most likely be Avengers Endgame. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember, there's always fresh content simmering on our storytelling stovetop. So whatever happens in this kitchen shouldn't stay in this marketing kitchen. I'm Ron Vining, your host, reminding you to invite your family and friends to the next episode of Marketing Kitchen TV.